The knock on my door came at 8:31 a.m. Precise. Measured. The kind of knock that already knows how it ends. I stood there barefoot on cold tile, phone clenched in my hand. Bank app still open, showing the red numbers burned into my vision like a crime scene photo. Balance. $0.00. Then the voice came through the door, calm and official. Police. Open up. My father had emptied my entire savings account after I refused to pay my sister's $25,000 debt. He thought I'd stay silent. He was wrong. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. My name is Claire Matthews, and for 28 years I played a role I never auditioned for. The reliable daughter, the fixer, the child who learned early that love and my family came with invoices attached, and payment was always due. I'm not going to tell you I had a terrible childhood. I didn't. There was no abuse in the traditional sense. No screaming. No violence. No overt cruelty. What I had was subtler and somehow more insidious. I had a family that weaponized guilt and packaged it as love. My sister Rachel is 31, 3 years older than me, and she's been a financial disaster since the day she got her first credit card at 18. Bad investments, worse boyfriends, impulse purchases justified as self-care, business ventures that collapsed within months. She called them mistakes. My father called them family responsibilities. And somehow, every single one of those responsibilities landed on my desk. I learned early how to apologize for things I didn't do, how to smooth tension before it sparked, how to be useful enough to be kept, valuable enough to be needed, but never important enough to be prioritized. That's the trick of being the responsible child in a family. With a golden child, you don't get praise for succeeding. You get expectations raised. You don't get celebrated for stability. You get assigned more problems to solve. I worked 2 jobs through college, while Rachel partied through a degree she never finished. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA and $15,000 in student loans that I paid off in 3 years through sheer discipline and overtime hours that left me exhausted and isolated. Rachel graduated with no degree, $30,000 in debt, and a trust fund from our grandmother that she burned through in 8 months on a vintage clothing boutique that never sold a single item. When her business failed, my father called it a learning experience. When I asked for help with textbooks my sophomore year, he told me it would build character to work for what I wanted. I learned the rules early. Rachel's failures were opportunities for growth. Mine were character flaws. So I stopped failing, stopped asking, stopped expecting anything except the opportunity to prove I was worthy of staying. I worked in financial analysis for a tech company, made decent money, not rich, but comfortable, enough to have a small apartment, a reliable car, and a savings account that I built dollar by dollar over 6 years. That account wasn't just money to me. It was years of restraint, sleep sacrificed, vacations declined, shoes worn past dignity, because I was saving for something bigger, a future, a down payment on a house, the security of knowing that if something went wrong, I had a cushion. That account represented every time I said no to myself, so I could say yes to my future. It was discipline measured in currency. It was $53,417. I knew the exact amount because I checked it every morning like people check the weather. It was my ritual, my reassurance, my proof that I was doing something right. 3 weeks ago, Rachel's latest disaster surfaced. She'd co-signed a loan for a boyfriend who'd promised to pay her back. The boyfriend disappeared. The loan didn't. $25,000, due in 90 days, or legal action would follow. My father called me on a Tuesday evening, didn't ask how I was doing, didn't make small talk, just launched directly into the problem. Rachel's in trouble. She needs $25,000. You're the only one with that kind of liquid savings. Not a request. A statement of fact. Like he was telling me the sun rises in the east, and I needed to act accordingly. Dad, that's my entire emergency fund. That's years of saving. I can't just give Rachel $25,000 because she co-signed a loan for a guy she'd known for 3 months. It's family, Claire. Family helps family. You've always been the responsible one, the one we can count on. Your sister made a mistake, but she's family. We don't abandon family over money. There it was. The familiar formula. Appeal to responsibility. Frame it as abandonment. Make saying no feel like betrayal. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm protecting my own financial security. Rachel made this choice. She's an adult. She needs to face the consequences and figure out her own solution. Silence. Long, heavy silence. So that's it. You're going to let your sister face legal action? Destroy her credit? Potentially lose everything because you want to keep your savings untouched? Dad, I've bailed Rachel out before. The car loan when she totaled her Lexus. The credit card debt when she maxed out 4 cards in 6 months. The security deposit when she broke her lease to follow that musician to Portland. At some point, helping becomes enabling. At some point, she needs to learn. You sound selfish, Claire. Cold. I raised you better than this. That word, selfish. The nuclear option. The word my father deployed whenever I prioritized my own needs over the family's demands. I'd heard it my whole life. Selfish for wanting to study instead of babysit Rachel. Selfish for taking a job across town instead of staying close to help with family obligations. Selfish for having boundaries. I'm not being selfish. I'm being realistic. If I give Rachel $25,000, what happens when the next crisis comes? Because there's always a next crisis with Rachel. When does it end? It ends when family stops keeping score. But I see where your priorities are. I'm disappointed in you, Claire. Your mother would be disappointed too. My mother had died 4 years ago from cancer. My father, invoking her memory, was a new low, even for him. Don't use Mom to manipulate me. She would have wanted Rachel to take responsibility for her own choices. You know that. I know your mother believed in family, in loyalty, in sacrifice. Apparently, those values didn't transfer to you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not hurt, not even anger, just clarity. Crystal clear, ice-cold understanding. My answer is no. I'm not giving Rachel $25,000. She needs to handle this herself. Talk to the loan company. Set up a payment plan. Declare bankruptcy if she has to. But I'm not funding another one of her disasters. My father was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Flatter, colder. The warmth that had been there, even in anger, was gone. I see. That's your final answer. Yes, that's my final answer. All right then. I understand where you stand. He hung up. No goodbye. No talk to you later. Just a click and silence. I sat there holding my phone, feeling strange. Not guilty, which is what I expected. Not relieved, though I should have been. I felt uneasy. My father hadn't argued more, hadn't tried to guilt me further, hadn't pulled out more emotional manipulation. He just accepted my no and hung up. That should have been a victory. It didn't feel like one. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from guilt, despite my father's best efforts to plan it. From intuition. Something felt wrong. I kept replaying my father's voice in my head. Too calm, too final. The way he'd said, I understand where you stand. Like he was checking something off a list. Like he'd already moved past the conversation, and I was the one still catching up. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Bank alert. I didn't open it right away. Lay there in the dark, phone glowing on my nightstand, and felt my heart rate slow instead of spike. I already knew. Don't ask me how. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was pattern recognition from years of watching my father operate. Maybe it was just the universe giving me a heads up before the floor dropped out. I picked up my phone, opened the banking app. The screen loaded, and there it was. Balance. $0 full withdrawal. Authorized user. Thomas Matthews. My father. The account I'd opened when I was 22. The one he'd helped me set up. The one where he'd insisted on staying listed as an authorized user, just in case something happens to you. Just in case. I'd been so grateful then. Touched that he cared. That he wanted to protect me. I'd never thought about what protection could mean. That it could mean access. That access could mean control. That control could mean theft. He'd never removed himself from the account. I'd trusted him not to use that access. Trust is expensive. He just taught me exactly how expensive. I sat there on the edge of my bed, barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, staring at that zero until the numbers stopped feeling real, until they became abstract, until the reality of what had just happened fully penetrated. My father had stolen my life savings. Not borrowed, not temporarily taken. Stolen. $53,417. Gone. Transferred out in the middle of the night while I slept. No warning. No conversation. No message. Just theft wrapped in fatherhood. My hands started shaking. Not from panic. From rage. So pure it felt like ice water in my veins. But I didn't scream. Didn't cry. Didn't call him. What I did was smile. Actually smiled in the dark of my bedroom at 2:17 a.m. with my life savings stolen, and my father revealed as exactly what he was. Because he'd made a mistake. A big one. He thought I'd be too hurt to fight back. Too conditioned to obedience. Too afraid of losing the family to pursue justice. He thought I'd stay silent. Accept it. Maybe even apologize for making him feel he had to do this. He was wrong. I opened my laptop. Started taking screenshots. Account history. Transfer logs. Authorization records. The email from 6 years ago, where he'd insisted on staying on the account for security purposes. The messages where he'd acknowledged the money was mine, where he'd praised my impressive responsibility and thanked me for being the dependable one. Dependable. Just another word for convenient. I backed everything up in 3 places: cloud storage, external hard drive, and email draft sent to myself. I printed physical copies. I organized folders with the same meticulous care I'd used to build that savings account in the first place. Then I started making phone calls. Not to my father. Not yet. To the bank first. Documented the unauthorized transfer. Filed a formal complaint. Got case numbers. Spoke to a supervisor who tried to tell me that authorized users have the right to access funds. He's authorized for emergency access. My medical emergency. Not to steal my savings because I refused to bail out my sister. That's theft. That's fraud. I want this documented. To an old friend from law school who owed me a favor and didn't ask why my voice was so calm when I explained what happened, who just said, "I'll make some calls," and hung up. To the police non-emergency line, where I filed a report for financial exploitation. To an attorney who specialized in elder abuse and financial crimes, who told me that what my father did was actionable even though we were family. Especially because we were family. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just built a case with the same discipline I'd used to build my savings. Every email, every text message, every conversation I could remember where he'd acknowledged the money was mine. I created a timeline, a paper trail, a prosecutable offense. And then I waited. Silence became my weapon. For 3 days, I didn't contact my father. Didn't respond to his texts asking if I was okay. Didn't answer his calls. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him think maybe I hadn't noticed yet. Maybe I was working long hours. Maybe my phone was broken. While I stayed silent, he got comfortable. Started moving the money around. I tracked every transfer through the bank's investigation. Watched him split it between accounts. Watched him think he was being clever. Watched him commit multiple counts of wire fraud in his attempt to hide what he'd stolen. He had no idea I was documenting everything. That every move he made was building my case. That his attempts to hide the theft were just adding charges. I let him feel safe. When I finally saw him, I didn't confront him. It was Sunday dinner at his house. a tradition he'd insisted on maintaining after Mom died. Rachel was there, oblivious or pretending to be. She hugged me like nothing had happened. Maybe she really didn't know. Maybe Dad had told her the money came from somewhere else. Or maybe she just didn't care where it came from as long as her problem was solved. I sat through dinner, barely spoke, picked at my food. My father watched me with concern that might have been genuine if I didn't know what I knew. "You seem tired, Claire. Everything all right?" I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd raised me, who'd taught me to ride a bike and help with homework and came to my college graduation. This man who'd stolen from me and felt justified doing it. Just working a lot. "I'm fine." "You'd tell me if something was wrong, wouldn't you? If you needed help." The audacity, the sheer audacity of asking if I needed help while sitting on my stolen savings. "Of course, Dad. You're always the first person I call." He smiled, relaxed, thought he'd gotten away with it. Thought I was too broken or too scared or too well-trained to fight back. There's power in being underestimated. He taught me that. He just never thought I'd use it against him. I went home that night and finalized everything. The police report, the bank fraud claim, the attorney's filing. Everything ready, everything documented, everything airtight. And then I made one more call to my father's lawyer, his estate attorney, the one who'd helped him with Mom's will. I told him everything, sent him the evidence, gave him 24 hours to convince my father to return the money voluntarily before I filed criminal charges. The lawyer called my father. I don't know what was said, but I know my father called me at 11 p.m., voice shaking with rage. "You called my attorney? You're threatening me with criminal charges? Over money? I'm your father. Claire, you're going to destroy this family over money. You destroyed it when you stole from me. The money comes back in full by tomorrow, or the charges get filed. Your choice." "You ungrateful, selfish." I hung up, turned off my phone, went to bed, slept better than I had in 3 days. The next morning at 8:31 a.m., the knock came. I knew it would. My father hadn't returned the money, had probably convinced himself I was bluffing, that I'd back down, that family loyalty would win out over justice. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. And standing in my door with that phone in my hand and $0 in my account, I finally understood what freedom actually costs. Sometimes it costs everything you've saved, and sometimes that's exactly the right price. I opened the door to find 2 police officers on my doorstep, Detective Maria Gonzalez and Officer Tim Bradford. I'd spoken to Detective Gonzalez twice on the phone over the past 3 days, walking her through the evidence, the timeline, the paper trail of my father's theft. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a no-nonsense demeanor that made me feel like I was finally being taken seriously. "Ms. Matthews," she said with a slight nod, "we have a warrant for your father's arrest. We need you to confirm some details before we proceed to his residence." I stepped aside and let them in. My apartment was small but organized, everything in its place, which is how I'd lived my entire life until 3 days ago, when my father had thrown a grenade into my carefully constructed stability. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder I'd labeled evidence. Showed them everything again, even though they'd already seen it. The account history showing my deposits over 6 years. Every paycheck contribution. Every tax return deposited. Every birthday check from relatives that had gone into that account. All of it documented, time-stamped, unmistakably mine. Then the withdrawal. 2:09 a.m. $53,417. Authorized by Thomas Matthews. Transferred to an account in his name only. He moved it again yesterday, I said, pulling up the bank's fraud investigation report. Split it between 3 different accounts. His personal checking, a savings account, and an investment account. The bank traced all of it. Every transfer is documented. Detective Gonzalez made notes. "And you're certain you never gave him permission to access these funds?" "I gave him authorized user access 6 years ago, when I opened the account." He told me it was for emergencies, in case something happened to me. I was 22 and I trusted him. I never imagined he'd use it to steal from me. What changed? What precipitated this? I told her about Rachel, about the $25,000 debt, about my father's demand that I pay it, about my refusal, about the phone call where he'd accepted my no too easily and hung up without arguing. He didn't try to convince you further? Officer Bradford asked. No, that's what made me suspicious. My father is a lawyer. He argues for a living. He never accepts no without a fight. When he just hung up, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know when until I saw my account at 2:14 a.m. And you didn't confront him? No. I documented everything first, built a case, made sure I had evidence that would hold up. Then I gave him a chance to return the money voluntarily through his attorney. He refused. Detective Gonzalez looked at me with something like respect. Most victims of family financial abuse don't pursue charges. They're too afraid of destroying family relationships or too conditioned to accept the abuse as normal. My father destroyed our relationship when he decided my savings were his to take. I'm just making sure there are consequences. Are you prepared for what happens next? Your father will be arrested. He'll be processed. He'll likely make bail, but he'll have a criminal record. Your family will know you're the one who filed charges. They may not react well. I thought about Rachel, about Sunday dinners, about the cousins and aunts and uncles who would hear about this and choose sides, about being the daughter who sent her father to jail. I'm prepared. He committed a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. Wire fraud, theft, financial exploitation. If he was anyone else, anyone not my father, we wouldn't be having this conversation about whether charges are appropriate. We'd just be arresting him. That's a very mature perspective. Detective Gonzalez said, a lot of people struggle to separate family from criminality. My father taught me to value justice and accountability. He just didn't think I'd apply those values to him. They left 20 minutes later, headed to my father's house with an arrest warrant and full documentation of his crimes. I watched them drive away and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a strange hollow calm, like the quiet after a storm passes and you're surveying the damage. My phone started ringing at 9:15 a.m. Rachel. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times, left a voicemail that I listened to with clinical detachment. Claire, what the hell did you do? The police just arrested Dad. They said you filed charges for theft. Are you insane? He's our father. Call me back right now. I deleted the voicemail. She called again. I sent it to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. She finally sent a text. You're dead to me. You just destroyed this family over money. Mom would be ashamed of you. I stared at that message for a long time. The invocation of our dead mother. The same tactic my father had used. The same manipulation dressed up as moral authority. I typed back. Dad stole $53,417 from me because I wouldn't pay your debt. He committed a felony. Mom would be ashamed of him. Don't contact me again. I blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's number. Then I went through my contacts and blocked every family member who I knew would take their side, which is most of them. My phone became blissfully quiet. The preliminary hearing was set for 2 weeks later. My father made bail within 6 hours, which told me he'd had access to money, just not my money that he'd stolen. His attorney was Gerald Morrison, the same estate attorney I contacted to give my father a chance to return the funds voluntarily. Gerald had clearly decided to represent my father in the criminal case, which was his right. The hearing was in Orange County Superior Court, downtown, in a building I'd walked past hundreds of times but never entered. I wore a navy suit, pulled my hair back, looked as professional and credible as possible, not because I was worried about being believed, the evidence was airtight, but because I wanted my father to see that I was taking this seriously, that this wasn't an emotional outburst I backed down from. This was calculated justice. My father was already there when I arrived, sitting with Gerald at the defense table. He looked older somehow, smaller. The confident attorney, who commanded courtrooms and dinner tables, had been replaced by a man who looked genuinely confused about how he'd ended up here. He looked at me when I walked in. Our eyes met across the courtroom. He didn't look angry. He looked hurt, betrayed, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I held his gaze until he looked away. The prosecutor was a woman named Jennifer Park, mid-30s, with a reputation for taking financial crimes seriously especially when they involved family members. She called me 2 days before the hearing to walk through my testimony and prepare me for what Gerald might argue. He's going to claim it was a misunderstanding, Jennifer had said, that he thought he had permission to use the funds for family emergencies, that helping your sister constituted an emergency, that you're overreacting because of some unrelated family conflict. Can he actually argue that with a straight face when he transferred the money at 2 a.m. and then tried to hide it by splitting it across multiple accounts? He can argue anything. Whether the judge believes it is another question. But Claire, I need you to be prepared for him to paint you as a vindictive daughter, weaponizing the legal system over a family dispute. Let him. The evidence speaks for itself. The hearing began. Judge Patricia Chun presiding. She was in her 60s, with a no-nonsense demeanor and a reputation for being particularly harsh on financial exploitation cases. Jennifer presented the charges. The people charged Thomas Matthews with grand theft under Penal Code Section 487. Financial elder abuse. Wait, this isn't elder abuse. Strike that. The people charged Thomas Matthews with grand theft under Penal Code Section 487 and multiple counts of wire fraud. Mr. Matthews used his authorized access to his daughter's bank account to transfer $53,417 without her permission, knowledge, or consent in the early hours of March 15th. He then attempted to conceal this theft by transferring the funds across multiple accounts over the following days. Gerald stood up. Your Honor, this is a family matter being criminalized by an estranged daughter. Mr. Matthews had authorized access to the account. He used those funds for a legitimate family emergency, helping his other daughter avoid financial ruin. The account was set up with the understanding that it was family money available for family needs. Judge Chen looked at him over her reading glasses. Mr. Morrison, are you arguing that authorized access means unlimited right to withdraw any amount for any reason without the account owner's permission? I'm arguing that the account was set up with family emergency provisions and that Mr. Matthews reasonably believed he was acting within those provisions. At 2 a.m., by transferring the entire balance and then hiding it across multiple accounts, my client acted in good faith to help his daughter, the defendant, to help his other daughter avoid a financial crisis. Which daughter? Because it seems like he helped one daughter by stealing from another. That's not good faith, Mr. Morrison. That's theft with a familial victim. Jennifer presented the evidence. The account history showing 6 years of deposits, all from my paychecks, my tax returns, my income. The withdrawal authorization showing my father's name and the 2:09 a.m. timestamp. The subsequent transfers showing him moving the money and splitting it up. The email from 6 years ago, where he'd requested authorized access for emergencies only. The text messages from the week before where he demanded I pay Rachel's debt, and I'd refused. Your Honor, this is theft by authorized user. Mr. Matthews had access for emergencies. His daughter refusing to voluntarily give him money does not constitute an emergency that justifies him taking it by force. This is not a family dispute. This is a crime. Gerald tried to argue that I'd given implied consent by having him on the account. Judge Chin shut him down. Implied consent doesn't exist in financial transactions, Mr. Morrison. You know that. If Ms. Matthews didn't explicitly authorize this specific withdrawal, it's theft. The fact that the perpetrator is her father doesn't change the criminal nature of the act. She set a trial date for 6 weeks out. My father didn't make eye contact as we left the courtroom, but Rachel did. She was waiting in the hallway. arms crossed, face red with rage. You're really going to do this? Send Dad to prison because you're too selfish to help family? I stopped walking, looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd been bailed out her entire life and never learned to swim on her own. Rachel, Dad stole from me $53,000. That's not helping family. That's committing a felony. He was helping me, helping pay MY debt, because you refused. Your debt, your responsibility, not mine, and definitely not something Dad had the right to steal from me to cover. You're going to regret this. When Dad goes to prison and the whole family knows you're the reason, you're going to regret it. The only thing I regret is not setting better boundaries years ago, not protecting myself sooner, not realizing that to you and Dad, I was never a daughter or a sister. I was just a bank account with a pulse. I walked past her, didn't look back. Jennifer Park caught up with me at the elevator. That was your sister? That's the sister whose dead dad stole my money to pay. She doesn't see the irony. Are you okay? I know confronting family in court is difficult. I'm fine. Better than fine. For the first time in my life, I'm not making myself smaller to make them comfortable. I'm not apologizing for having boundaries. I'm not accepting abuse because we share DNA. Good, because this is going to get harder before it gets easier. Family financial abuse cases always do. But Claire, what your father did was wrong. Legally wrong. Morally wrong. You're doing the right thing by holding him accountable. The trial was 6 weeks later. My father had rejected a plea deal that would have given him probation and required full restitution. His attorney had apparently convinced him that a jury wouldn't convict a father for trying to help his daughters. They were wrong. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified for 4 hours, walked the jury through the account history, the unauthorized withdrawal, the subsequent cover-up attempts, explained I'd said no to helping Rachel, and my father had stolen from me in retaliation. Gerald tried to make me look vindictive on cross-examination, asked about family dinners I'd skipped, times I hadn't returned phone calls quickly enough, implied I was a difficult daughter who'd always resented my sister. Ms. Matthews, isn't it true that you've always been jealous of your sister's relationship with your father? No, I've always been the responsible one, while Rachel got away with being reckless. There's a difference between jealousy and resentment at unequal treatment. Isn't this prosecution really about punishing your father for loving your sister? This prosecution is about my father stealing $53,000 from me. His motivation doesn't make it less illegal. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts: grand theft, wire fraud, financial exploitation. My father's face went white. Rachel, sitting in the gallery, started crying. I felt nothing. Just watched the bailiff take my father into custody pending sentencing. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Judge Chen looked at my father with something between disappointment and disgust. Mr. Matthews, you're an attorney. You know the law. You knew what you were doing was illegal. You stole from your own daughter because she refused to enable your other daughter's irresponsible behavior. You then tried to hide the theft. You showed no remorse. You blamed the victim. Even now, you seem to believe you were justified. She sentenced him to 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and full restitution of $53,417, plus court costs and my attorney fees. Total, $67,000. I'm also ordering financial counseling and a permanent restraining order preventing you from having any access to your daughter Claire's financial accounts or assets. You've proven you cannot be trusted. My father was led away. He didn't look at me. Rachel did. Mouthed, "I hate you," from across the courtroom. I gathered my things and left. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer Park caught up with me one last time. "How do you feel?" "Tired. Relieved. Free. Your father will probably serve 9 months if he behaves. Then probation. The restitution order is enforceable, so you'll get your money back, though it might take time. I don't care about the timeline. I care that there were consequences, that he didn't get away with it just because he's my father. A lot of people couldn't do what you did. Pursue criminal charges against a parent. Testify in court. Follow through even when the family turned against you. That takes strength. It takes boundaries. It takes understanding that being family doesn't mean immunity from accountability. It takes refusing to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I walked away from that courthouse with a criminal judgment in my favor, a family that hated me, and a sense of peace I'd never felt before. Because for the first time in 28 years, I wasn't playing a role. I wasn't being the reliable daughter or the convenient bank account or the emotional punching bag who absorbed everyone's chaos. I was just Claire, and Claire didn't negotiate with thieves, even when they raised her, especially when they raised her. Let me have part 3. Make sure this amass a total of 1,500 words, and by all means do not scatter the lines of the script. 10:12 a.m. part 3. 1,500 words exact. My father served 9 months in county jail. I didn't visit him once. Not because I was punishing him, though I'm sure that's how he saw it, but because I had nothing left to say. The man who'd raised me, who taught me about justice and accountability, and doing the right thing even when it was hard, had proven that those values only applied to other people. Not to him. Not when it inconvenienced him. Not when it conflicted with his golden child's needs. Rachel sent me emails. I never opened them. She sent letters to my apartment. I returned them unopened. She showed up at my workplace once, 3 months into my father's sentence, and security had to escort her out after she caused a scene in the lobby screaming about how I destroyed our family. I filed for a restraining order the next day. Got it approved within a week. The judge who granted it looked at the case file, saw that I'd already had to prosecute my father for financial theft, and didn't ask many questions. Ms. Matthews, I'm granting this order for 2 years. Your sister is not to contact you directly or indirectly, not through third parties, not through social media, not at all. If she violates this order, she'll be arrested. Do you understand you'll need to document any violations? I understand. I've gotten good at documentation. The judge almost smiled. I can see that. Your case file is impressively organized. The restitution payments started coming 2 months after my father was released. He'd sold his house, the one I'd grown up in, the one my mother had died in, to pay what he owed me. I felt nothing when I heard. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a kind of distant acknowledgement that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are painful. He was living in a small apartment now, working as a contract attorney for a firm that didn't mind hiring someone with a criminal record. His legal career, the one he built over 30 years, was effectively over. No firm would take him on as a partner. No clients wanted an attorney who'd been convicted of stealing from his own daughter. He'd lost his reputation, his home, his standing in the community, and I'd lost nothing except people who'd never really valued me anyway. The money came back slowly, $500 a month, garnished from his wages. At that rate, it would take more than 10 years to pay back the full amount, plus the attorney fees and court costs. I opened a new bank account, a different bank entirely. No authorized users, no emergency access, just me, new rules, new boundaries, no emotional loopholes. I also changed jobs, not because I had to, but because I wanted a fresh start. Took a position with a financial crimes investigation firm, ironically enough. My experience prosecuting my own father made me overqualified for the role. Turned out there was a whole industry built around holding people accountable for financial exploitation, and I'd become accidentally expert in exactly that. My new boss, Margaret Chen, no relation to Judge Chen though they'd gotten a laugh about the coincidence, hired me on the spot. Your case made the legal blogs, she said during my interview. The daughter who prosecuted her father for theft. It was unusual. Most family financial abuse goes unreported because victims are too afraid or too conditioned to the abuse to recognize it as criminal. I was conditioned to. For 28 years, But there's a difference between being trained to accept something and actually accepting it once you see it clearly. What made you see it clearly? I thought about that. About the 2:14 a.m. bank alert. About the zero balance. About the moment I'd realized my father valued his control over my compliance more than he valued my well-being. He didn't just steal my money. He stole it to punish me for saying no. That's when I understood our entire relationship was transactional. He didn't love me. He loved what I could provide. And when I stopped providing, I became disposable. Margaret nodded. That's the pattern we see in family financial abuse. The abuser views their victim as a resource, not a person. And when the resource refuses to be extracted, the abuser escalates. Your father's mistake was escalating to a criminal act that left a paper trail. His mistake was thinking I'd stay silent, that I'd accept it because family doesn't prosecute family, that I'd value his comfort over my justice. Well, you're going to help a lot of other people find their voice here. That's what we do. We investigate financial exploitation, build cases, and help victims understand they have options, even when the perpetrator is family. I worked there for 2 years, helped prosecute 17 cases of family financial abuse. Parents stealing from children, children stealing from elderly parents, siblings forging documents, spouses hiding assets. Every case was different in details but identical in pattern. One person viewing another person as a resource to be extracted, and then getting shocked when the resource fought back. I got good at it. Really good. My own case had taught me to look for the patterns, the red flags, the ways abusers justified their theft as love or help or family obligation. I learned to spot the victims who were ready to fight back and the ones who needed more time. I learned to build airtight cases that couldn't be dismissed as family disputes. And I learned that justice, when it finally comes, doesn't feel like victory. It feels like closure. 1 year after my father's release from jail, I got a letter from him. Not through Rachel, not through family, directly to my workplace. Forwarded through the legal department because he correctly assumed I'd blocked any direct contact. The letter was typed, formal, like a legal brief instead of a personal communication. Margaret Chin brought it to my desk. This came for you. From Thomas Matthews. Do you want me to screen it first? No. I'll read it. If it's threatening or manipulative, I'll add it to the restraining order file. It wasn't threatening. It was worse. It was an apology. Not a real one. Not the kind that takes accountability, but the kind that blames the victim for misunderstanding the abuser's intentions. Dear Claire, I hope this letter finds you well. I've had time to reflect on the events that led to our current estrangement, and I want you to know that I'm sorry you felt hurt by my actions. I was trying to help your sister during a difficult time, and I believe that as family, we had an understanding about resources being available for emergencies. I never intended to steal from you. I truly believed I was acting within the bounds of our family arrangement. I understand now that you viewed the situation differently, and I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I've paid a heavy price for my mistake. I lost my home, my career, my reputation, and my daughter. I'm asking you to consider reconciliation, not for my sake, but for the sake of family. Your mother would have wanted us to forgive each other and move forward. I'm willing to continue the restitution payments and to respect whatever boundaries you need. I just want my daughter back. I miss you. I love you. And I hope someday you can forgive me. Dad, I read it twice. Felt the familiar manipulation in every line. The passive voice that removed his agency. I'm sorry you felt hurt, instead of I'm sorry I hurt you. The framing of theft as a misunderstanding about family arrangements. The invocation of my dead mother. The implication that I was the one who needed to forgive, to bend, to accommodate. The subtle guilt trip about the price he paid. As if consequences for crimes were somehow my fault. What does it say? Margaret asked. I handed her the letter. She read it, her expression getting darker with each paragraph. This is textbook Darvo. Deny, attack. Reverse victim and offender. He's denying the intentional theft by calling it a misunderstanding. He's attacking you by implying you're choosing estrangement over family. And he's reversing the roles by presenting himself as the victim who's suffered unfairly. I know. I've read enough of these now to recognize the pattern. Are you going to respond? No. There's nothing to say. He doesn't want reconciliation. He wants absolution. He wants me to tell him it's okay that he stole from me, that I forgive him, that we can go back to the way things were. And we can't, because the way things were was me being a bank account he could access whenever he decided his other daughter needed something. What do you want? Margaret asked. I thought about that, about what I actually wanted, not what I was supposed to want, not what a good daughter would want, but what I, Claire Matthews, genuinely needed to move forward. I want him to leave me alone. I want to build a life where my value isn't measured by my usefulness. I want relationships based on actual love instead of transactional obligation. I want to stop carrying the weight of other people's choices. Those are all reasonable things to want. Then that's what I'm choosing. No response. No reconciliation. Just boundaries and peace. I filed the letter in my personal case folder. Added a note that my father had attempted contact. Didn't respond. 3 months later, I got a wedding invitation. Not from Rachel. We were still under a restraining order. From my cousin Michelle, my mother's sister's daughter. We'd been close as kids, drifted apart as adults, reconnected briefly at my mother's funeral. The invitation was addressed just to me. No +1 noted, which was fine because I wasn't seeing anyone. Inside was a handwritten note. Claire, I know things are complicated with your family right now. I want you to know you're invited because you're my cousin and I love you, not because of anyone else. Dad and Rachel won't be there. I made that clear. If you want to come, come. If not, I understand. But I hope you know you still have family who sees you. Love, Michelle. I cried reading that note. First time I cried about any of this. Not because I was sad, but because someone in my family had finally seen me as a person instead of a problem to manage or a resource to extract. I went to the wedding, wore a blue dress my mother would have loved, sat in the back. Michelle saw me during the reception, broke away from the crowd, and hugged me hard. I'm so glad you came. I almost didn't. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome. You're always welcome. What your dad did was wrong. What Rachel's been doing is wrong. Some of us see that. Some of us are on your side. I didn't know there were sides. There are always sides. Some of the family thinks you overreacted, that you should have handled it privately, that you shouldn't have sent your dad to jail. But some of us think you did exactly what you needed to do, that you set a boundary and enforced it, that you showed Rachel and your dad that they can't just take from you without consequences. Thank you for saying that. I've been feeling pretty alone. You're not alone. You're just surrounded by people who finally respect your boundaries. That can feel lonely when you're used to being surrounded by people who violated them. I stayed at the wedding for 2 hours, met Michelle's new husband, who was kind and funny and clearly adored her, talked to my aunt, who apologized for not reaching out sooner, exchanged numbers with 2 other cousins who said they'd been following my case and were proud of me for standing up for myself, drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. 6 months after that, I got a notification from the court. My father had filed a motion to modify the restitution terms. He wanted the monthly payment reduced from $500 to $200, claiming financial hardship. I showed up to the hearing. My father looked older, grayer, smaller. His attorney argued that he was barely making ends meet, that the garnishment was leaving him unable to afford basic necessities, that $500 a month was unsustainable. The judge looked at the file, looked at my father, looked at me. Mr. Matthews, you stole over $53,000 from your daughter. You were convicted of multiple felonies. You're fortunate the sentence wasn't harsher. The restitution payment is not a suggestion. It's a court order. You made choices that led to this situation. Your daughter shouldn't have to wait longer to be made whole because you're finding the consequences of your actions inconvenient. Motion denied. Payment terms unchanged. My father would be paying me $500 a month for the next 8 years, would be reminded monthly of what he'd done and what he'd lost. As I left the courthouse, he called after me. "Claire, please. Can we just talk?" I stopped, turned around, looked at this man who'd raised me and stolen from me, and then blamed me for the consequences. "No, we can't. You made your choices. Now you live with them, just like I'm living with mine. I'm your father. You were my father. Now you're just the man who taught me that biology doesn't obligate me to accept abuse. Thank you for that lesson. It was expensive, but it was worth it." I walked away. He didn't follow. 2 years later, I bought a house. Small, 3-bedroom, with a yard and good light. I furnished it slowly, carefully, with things I actually liked instead of things that were practical or on sale. I painted the walls colors my father would have called impractical. I hung art my sister would have mocked. I made it mine in a way nothing had ever been mine before. The first night in that house, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and thought about the journey from that 2:14 a.m. bank alert to this moment, about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I'd lost my father, though I'd argue I'd never really had him in any meaningful way. Lost my sister, same caveat applies. Lost most of my extended family. Lost the illusion of belonging to something bigger than myself. But I'd gained boundaries, self-respect, the knowledge that I could fight back and win, the understanding that family is about behavior, not biology, and I'd gained peace, real peace, the kind that comes from knowing nobody has access to your life without your explicit permission, the kind that comes from building something that's entirely yours and can't be taken away because you've protected it properly. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "Prosecution successful on the Chung case. Client gets full restitution plus damages. Thought you want to know your case notes. Help build the framework." I smiled, typed back. Good. One more person who learned they don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family. You started something when you prosecuted your father. Other people are finding their courage because you found yours. I didn't respond, just looked out at my backyard, my house, my life that I built carefully with boundaries and documentation, and the refusal to negotiate with people who viewed me as a resource. The knock had come at 8:31 a.m. 2 years ago. Police at my door, my father arrested, my family destroyed, and I'd open that door with $0 in my account and no idea how this would end. Now I knew. It ended with me sitting on my back porch in a house I own completely, with boundaries that couldn't be crossed and a peace that couldn't be stolen. It ended with me understanding that sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do, that sometimes justice costs everything, and sometimes when the bill comes due, you pay it gladly because what you get in return, your dignity, your safety, your freedom, is worth infinitely more than what you lost. My father taught me that everything has a price. He just didn't expect me to make him pay it. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Who in your life is treating you like a bank account instead of a person? Who's confusing access with permission? Who's using family as an excuse for theft? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Tell me about the boundary you're afraid to set. Tell me about the person you're afraid to confront. Tell me about the theft you've been calling family help. Because I promise you, you're not alone. There are thousands of us who've had to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation, who've had to prosecute people we loved because love doesn't justify crime, who've had to learn that being related to someone doesn't obligate you to fund their chaos or absorb their abuse. And every single one of us will tell you the same thing. The guilt fades, the peace grows, and the life you build on the other side of that boundary is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every lost relationship, every accusation of selfishness. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve to keep what you've earned. And you don't owe anyone access to your life, your money, or your peace. Not even family, especially not family who's proven they'll abuse that access. The knock came from my father at 8:31 a.m. When will it come for yours?